Broadcasting live from the IRSMedic studios, it's Parental Advisory. Well, hello and welcome to Parental Advisory.
Well, hello and welcome to Parental Advisory.
Is my hair okay? It was a little frizzy today.
It was?
Yeah.
No, I think it's,
Okay.
well, you know what? I can see it, but the camera probably can't.
Okay, good.
So
it's fantastic.
don't worry too much about it.
All right, I won't let it distract me.
Don't let it get in the way of an awesome show that we have on tap
Yes,
for people today.
yes.
Yep.
Why do tax attorneys even exist?
To point out things such as hair that might be a little frizzy.
You're good at that.
Just to get under your skin a little bit.
Just a little bit.
A little bit of self-doubt. That's why. That's one reason we exist.
So I started doing some research.
Okay.
Because I didn't know all the reasons.
All right.
And here's some that I found. Number one, big one, obviously. If the IRS is pursuing criminal charges,
Yes.
so you screwed up.
Yes.
Either inadvertently or you broke the law on purpose.
Yes, or somewhere in between. It's usually somewhere in between. Not all the way, because people who go all the way don't tend to do tax evasion as their big crime. They go for drug trafficking, something a little bit more profitable, because tax evasion, all you're going to do is avoid payment of taxes, which is a percentage of your income. Whereas, say, narco trafficking, it's $1 billion empire, which much more.
More profit there.
Yeah, usually if you're going to do something, it's really not quite. You usually have some sort of mitigating factor.
Okay. The next one is, and I have some experience with this now, need someone to communicate on your behalf with the IRS, for instance, power of attorney, if you're stressed especially. And I thought that was really telling, and just having an experience with a family member who was having IRS issues, and she was outrageously stressed to the point where she said, you know what, I want to hand over power of attorney because I don't know, I have to call a company, I have to call the IRS, I have to call this guy, I have to call, I don't know who to call. So I thought, definitely if you need help.
And it's actually, hopefully you don't mind, but this family member came here and we helped her out.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's a lot easier for us. It's something that we see all the time, and it's not a big deal.
And it's easier for me because she wanted me to do it. All right, so you receive a CP notice. I don't know what this is.
You know what? I just want to backtrack to
Okay.
the IRS is pursuing criminal charges, and this is about tax attorneys. Well, you actually kind of want a hybrid, or at least a team. If the IRS is pursuing criminal charges, yeah, you can contact me. Sure, you could call us, and we would put together some sort of a team that would do it. But it wouldn't. Again, it's not going to be us going to criminal trial. You really need a criminal defense attorney, but you just can't stop at that criminal defense attorney, because tax crimes are really different than a lot of other crimes charged. It's a statutory crime, and the IRS typically doesn't know what it might be talking about. So you want to have a criminal defense attorney who's working hand in hand with a tax attorney to say, okay, this is what the IRS is saying, but their figures are wrong. They're inventing this. Nope, they're wrong. They're wrong. Get their, look at their research, where they're coming up with, and also to be that expert to hammer them on cross-examination. So just with that very few tax attorneys are both.
Gotcha.
And even the ones that are both actually know that trial work is trial work, and you still bring in your experts.
That makes sense.
And there's really the best criminal tax defense are a little bit of both, but they still go in and come in with their experts to blast away the IRS.
Okay. All right. So what is a CP notice?
CP notice is it's a notice the IRS says, hey, we have a mismatch with something you reported on your return. CP 2000 is the one that typically comes to mind. There's a CP 23. I don't know what the numbers mean exactly. You just see the notices all the time. If you did not, a big time comes up is a CP notice comes up to say when you have a stock options. If you're an employee and you had stock options and you went and sold them in 1 year, and the IRS says, hey, you had these stock options and you didn't fill out your return right, or you owe all this money, and because you didn't properly report your basis or something. The IRS is saying you owe some money, and those are not always right. The IRS isn't always right, but I'll tell you what, a lot of people get that notice, they get scared, like, oh, I don't know what to do with this. And they don't think there's help. They actually don't think there's a whole industry out here that exists because the IRS is terrorizing people. But there is, and we're out here to help, to say no matter what notice is out there, no matter what happens to you, every situation can be made better with the IRS. And so no matter what it is, and if you're scared about it, you should be contacting a tax attorney, and we can help you out with it.
Yeah, I could see some people's knee-jerk reaction, especially if it's not owing a ton. Just write the check. I just want the IRS gone.
Yep.
And then the IRS gets their money if they deserve it or not.
Yep. And then sometimes people come in and the amount is like, you know what, here, I want you, it's not worth it for you to hire me. I don't want you to pay this bill, so write this specifically to the IRS and see how it goes. And a lot of times that works too.
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't mind. Someone coming in, it's a small dollar thing. We're really not going to help them out too much, or we charge them. So you just handle it yourself to tell them this, this, and this. And that should get you that result. And that's really a big time with the CP notices, because it won't be typically all the money in the world, except when it comes to stock sales. That's usually when we're getting involved.
All right. How about collections?
Yes, IRS collections. Oh man, they have a bunch of scary notices they sent out. It's called something they like to call the IRS notice stream. Doesn't that sound right?
Really,
when you take a
really
canoe
terrible.
down? The IRS notice stream. Hi, would you like to visit me and join me? Yeah, the notice stream is a whole bunch of things that they send you. And I think there was some movie, I never seen it, but the term gaslighting, do you know what that term is?
No.
Gaslighting? Well, you sort of make someone, you do something, like this is what, if I was going to gaslight you, okay, maybe I will. I would sort of put something near your, or in your coffee every day. I'd add a little something to it. Something that would make you a little questioning what's going on. Gaslighting was where you would turn on natural gas light in your lover's room, and there would ever so slightly, they'd be inhaling natural gas, which would make them go a little bit crazy. And they would think they're crazy and start thinking they're crazy, and because you added it. And so this is sort of the equivalent of the notice stream, is that you send these notices that are so friggin' scary and impossible to understand that when an actual notice that shows up that you really need to act on it, and oh my God, there's all these important appeal rights, really act on this one, by this time you're completely inoculated from anything the IRS says. That just goes into the same pile of crap. You already have that big stack that you're saving. You didn't throw out. You didn't open them.
Yeah.
Because people come into our office and they'll have like, oh yeah, I got a whole bunch of notices unopened from the IRS.
Yes.
So like, okay, they'll be old, yellow, and if they're smoked, it's like, yeah, it smells a little smoky. Like, okay, let's just start taking a look at some of these and start opening them up. Like, okay, this was for tax year 1999. Okay. Okay. And then I was like, okay, then this notice right here is important. And I think that's and I may actually get it. There's some things that I don't like seeing. And there was something that happened yesterday. I made my wife tell me. I'm like, no, I don't want to read it.
Yes.
I don't want to I need someone I trust to tell me so I know how to gauge my reaction, because I don't know if I'm going to collapse if I read this. And so that's sort of the same thing. We open up like, okay, this is not serious. This means nothing. That's just their basic scare letter. That doesn't mean anything. This one is somewhat operative, and we're going to want to take action right now so that we can avoid a disaster. And that's one part of collections. And there is that reaction. I mean, I think, the percentage of people that get a collection notice from the IRS and say, oh, this is just like any bill. I'm opening up my cell phone bill. I didn't pay enough on my cell phone bill. Oh, let me take care of that right away. No, because usually it's more than whatever cell phone bill. I guess the international roaming can get you.
Yes.
But then you can fight that. I fought that successfully. Proved the date stamp. They tried to get me. This is a little off topic, but yeah, I came back from Costa Rica. I was doing a little business down there. I come back and I have a charge of data for $1,000. I'm like, what did I do? And I'm like, I don't even remember using my phone that much. And the first thing when I was down there, my business associate said, as soon as you land here, turn off your international data roaming. You're gonna do that. So I opened my phone, I'm like, turned off. Okay, that was it. And I mean, I turned it on for seconds to check messages at home.
Yep.
I'm at my hotel. I'm like, okay, turning it on. Okay, turn it off.
You turn it off.
And then I get home and there's this bill for $1,000. And I'm like, what is going on with this? And I said, when I noticed something. When I landed in Miami International Airport, it didn't say, AT&T network. It said the Movistar, the network in Costa Rica. And I was like, well, that's funny. And then I couldn't use my phone either. I'm like, well, this is funny. The phone's not even working. This is crazy. And then so when I looked at the bill, it said December 6th, and the timestamp was right when I was in Miami airport. And I said, okay, you're going to reverse those charges because I have my immigration timestamped right there. And so they reversed it. And I guess it happens a lot. And so I wonder how many people pay for international data roaming that doesn't exist. And so I'm like, what kind of scam are they running?
Never mess with a tax attorney.
I'm like, hey, man, I
Dude,
had it
tax attorney.
dude, I had it right there. It was awesome. The whole time I mean, Miami, oh my God, international is like one of the it's worse than JFK. Don't do that. Oh God, avoid it. And so I'm like, that's kind of funny as I was so angry with that thing. Who knew that would be the timestamp to prove?
Yep.
I could not have been international unless Miami International Airport. No, it doesn't work like that. Collections.
Yes.
IRS collections. So yeah, a lot of things aren't like that. And then also revenue officers coming to your house.
That's gotta be scary.
Yeah, right. And you know, most people don't know is that IRS revenue officers aren't allowed to pick up the phone and give you a ring-a-ding-ding to say, hey, I'm going to be stopping by. What's a good time for you? No, this is how they stop by.
You're serious.
Right there. And if it's your place of business, they're going to say, like 10 o'clock when all your employees are there. And they'll say, hey, I'm from the IRS. I'm here. I'm a revenue officer from the IRS. I'm here to see the business owner.
Do they have badges?
They have plastic lanyard cards.
But not like a
not like
a
no,
cop
no. They
badge?
used to, I think they used to, and they used to be silver because the test was always if they were gold means criminal.
Ooh.
Gold badge, okay, that's a really
Oh man,
hold
they
on
went
a
from
second.
badges to little lanyards.
They got a lanyard like a little
Sucks.
laminated
They're all
thing.
mad.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, wow, how emasculating. Like, yeah, I think they used to have a silver badge
Yep.
that said revenue officer. Then they got rid of that so they can swipe in their security places
Makes sense.
wherever it is. Kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
Still not great.
All right. So if you think that your CPA or tax preparer or yourself made an error, that would be another reason that you might need a tax attorney.
Yep.
And what I found interesting is you were telling me that people that work at, for instance, H&R Block, places similar to that, they go through a 10-hour class on how to prepare taxes.
It's about that. Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
That's frightening.
Yep.
Wow. Okay, so there's a possibility somebody did make an error.
There's
and
a
you would be held
possibility.
accountable for that error because you signed the paperwork.
Yeah, and usually the H&R Block errors are a lot to do with credit, and they tend to be, I think the biggest error that we see is people double claiming the dependents. This is the problem a lot of people get into every year is like, well, I'm going to claim the dependents this year, and then I'm going to claim the dependents this year when you have a split couple, and then there's a race to who's going to file their return the quickest.
Oh, yeah.
That's something that happens a lot. We really can't help out too much. It's like, well, that's really an issue between, you and the other person.
That's why you don't practice family law.
Right, exactly.
All right. So
another thing we do is also tax planning. That a lot of people are looking to lower their taxes.
Really?
And we don't get, our firm, we are more in reacting to situations that go bad. But then when we have them fixed, then we'll say, okay, from now on, why don't you do things like this? This could save you a bunch of money if you just structure it like that.
that's very cool.
Yeah.
Last reason I found is if you're being audited.
Yes.
What I found interesting about being audited, something I didn't have a lot of knowledge on, I literally thought it was random, like picking people out of the pool, but it doesn't happen that way.
Not at all.
You're audited for a specific reason,
Yes.
but you don't know why.
You can, usually, like you see a sample size of people being audited around. So I'm like, okay, it looks like the IRS has a focus on people with K1 passive losses in these years under about these amounts.
That sounds illegal.
Yeah.
Sort of like a cop pulling you over for no reason. Except, you're driving a Honda with tinted windows.
Right. You know what that is? Yeah, it does seem kind of screwed up. Right. Well, the tax code moved away from everybody needing to be in compliance because it's just not that way anymore. It used to be that the IRS took pains to say it doesn't matter who you are, you need to be in compliance with the tax law. And something has changed, and for the worse. Something has changed recently for the worse. The IRS is basically saying there's a whole bunch of people, you don't need to be in compliance. We're not going to bother you. You can do a whole bunch of illegal stuff, and we're not really going to bother you. And like fraudulent credits, a big thing that goes on that the IRS shuts up about because it doesn't want people knowing about it. And I'll tell you right now what it is it's something called slavery reparations.
What is that?
It's huge in the black community. And what happens, and this is how it works, is that a person will go around and say, hey, didn't you know the IRS is giving slavery reparations? And then people are like, no, you're full of it. And like, no, serious, it works. This is, you know what? If have you claimed your credit before? No. I'll do your tax return for you for $2,000, and I'll make sure that you get, what you're entitled to under the law. Okay. And then wouldn't you know it, a check for $52,000 is direct deposited into that taxpayer's account.
What?
Oh, yeah. And it happens on a huge, huge scale. So it's just this $50,000, and basically I've seen the return. It's just putting in a phony credit, and that the IRS can't catch in time.
Yep.
Now they get better at it, but that money goes into that account. It's gone. It's spent. And then the IRS kind of looks stupid, and it's going on at an enormous rate. Now, where are the criminal prosecutions for that? Nowhere.
Right.
Because the IRS doesn't want people to know about it. Because it's incredibly embarrassing.
Yeah.
Plus, if people knew how easy it was to do, there'd be more people doing it.
The IRS is like a teenage girl. So embarrassed.
They're like so embarrassed. So that's something that goes on. And so really who gets audited, so it's not the person who's putting in a fraudulent claim for credit.
Right.
They're just not. They're like, who's audited is the person who has, because this is why you don't audit that person or go after them too hard, because the money's already spent. By the time you catch up to them, the money's gone, and chances of collecting it are very limited. So the IRS has changed from making it to be, hey, let's have everyone, we're all in it together for compliance, to say, who can pay? Who is going to be paying?
Oh, okay. So stockholders.
Yeah, so people
with money.
Right, people with money. Who can we hit big, who can we hit a big tax bill for? So people with foreign accounts, oh my God, that's like the focus. I mean, that's going to be the next focus for the next 10 years.
Yep.
Foreign, because the penalties are out through the roof if you do it wrong. And the chances of you doing something wrong are I'm going to say nearly guaranteed, because offshore tax compliance is the most complicated thing in the world to do. A lot of that has to do with the IRS not doing things right. Like one of the things we've mentioned on our podcast is that the IRS uploaded the wrong U.S.-UK tax treaty. And it actually was really important because one version said that UK income was deferrable, UK retirement income was, and the other one said it was not.
Oh, well, it's a pretty disparaging difference.
So there's like, wow, so you have to know wait a second. This is that trick treaty here. So you have to be on your toes to go a little bit deeper. And that's just one example of how absolutely complicated it is. And then if you fail to report it to, you have your FBAR filing penalties that so many people can get caught up with, because a lot of people know, oh, I know there's an FBAR, but they didn't. Did you know your foreign life insurance was subject to it? Did you know your pension plan? And then also any money you inherited, was there a trust? There's some additional forms you didn't know about either. So there it is. And then because there's that money, the IRS says, yes, that's who we want to audit and go after. So they're really looking for, they're not looking to audit someone and hit them with $1,000 tax bill. They really need to get it into six figures.
To make it worth it.
Yeah.
And I think one consistent message, no matter what, reason you have for hiring a tax attorney, is knowing that you can get away with whatever you're doing, intentional or not, until you don't.
And it's mostly the unintentional, that somebody has gone to the same H&R Block preparer. But by the way, H&R Block, I've learned this, unless this person who was interviewing for a job lied to me, they don't work here, but I was very curious on how H&R Block worked. They said, well, I'm doing pretty good now, because I think their base pay is just incredibly low for I just don't know why somebody would want to work those kind of hours for very low pay for part-time. So I'm like, what makes you want to do this? And they said, well, if you have your repeat customers that come back to you, you get paid more. And so you want to make sure you get them a lot of money back.
Wow.
Yeah. And then a lot of CPAs, they kind of have the same thing. And it's like, yep, I just go to this CPA because I know that he's going to, goose it along.
I may or may not do that.
So it can go on for years. And you think that, oh, yeah, I found the secret. And you start believing your own BS. You're like, yep, I found the secret. All these other people, they're stupid. And then one day,
you get the notice in the mail.
You get the notice. You're like, yeah.
All right. So your argument is there should actually be no market for tax attorneys.
Yeah.
So what we want to talk about next is, okay, so why are they needed? And why do you think they shouldn't even be around? We'll talk about that next on Parental Advisory.
The IRS asked for feedback on its offshore voluntary disclosure program and streamlined procedures. Guess what? IRSMedic responded. On October 16th, members of the IRSMedic offshore team presented detailed suggestions on how the IRS can best improve their offshore disclosure processes. From the perhaps picayune request to remove typos from their OVTP forms to the perhaps more significant advice on how the IRS can follow the law. So what were these improvements the IRS should make? Visit IRSMedic.com to find out.
I didn't know picayune was a word. Need some great tips on how to negotiate with the IRS? Believe it or not, it is possible. Last week, we did an awesome 3-part series on negotiating with the IRS. Visit ParentalAdvisoryShow.com and click on podcasts to watch or listen to past shows. A couple of fantastic people right there, I tell you.
Yeah, that was a great promo. That was just, I like how I attacked it too.
You went after it.
Attacked it, yeah.
So we're talking about why do tax attorneys exist? And as a tax attorney, you're saying there should be no market for you.
Right.
Why?
How, if we live in a place where there's a allegedly limited government and we have self-government, how could it be that our services are so in demand? This doesn't make sense. It would make sense that you would need a tax attorney in Russia.
Yes.
And then also you need a briber in Russia too, or maybe that's the reason is a lot of countries there's just corruption. You just basically you don't hire a tax attorney. You just like, okay, how much is this going to cost to?
I'm going to pay you, Igor, the 2,000 rubles that he wants.
And so I think maybe this is just the equivalent of, well, America, we have too much integrity. We don't accept bribes, but you will have to pay a tax attorney and then something to work this all out.
And it seems like the IRS doesn't even understand its own rules.
Oh, God, no.
There's so many forms. There's so many rules. There's so many different kinds of tax. It's just, it seems overwhelming to even the IRS.
I don't think you can expect anyone at the IRS to, once you know how big it all is and how convoluted it all is, it's absolutely insane to expect anyone at the IRS to know more than their very small window of knowledge. And that's always cracks me up when people advertise as ex-IRS agent, 20 years, and hire me, I'm an ex-IRS agent. And it's like, well, they're really good at what they did, okay? Whatever they did for that 20 years, it's really good. But their specialty could be so incredibly narrow that they were working, well, my specialty was that I was working on annuities that were market capitalized between $10 and $200 million. That originated in Chicago. And that's what I ought, and just like so bizarre like that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, if you need someone to help you with that specific issue, then that's great. But just because they were an ex-IRS employee doesn't mean they have a clue on actually how to help you out.
When we were talking about negotiating with the IRS last week, you mentioned an IRS agent who, she was 20 years IRS agent, and she didn't know that you could use bankruptcy?
Right. And there's a distinction. She was an IRS examiner. She was an IRS agent. IRS agents are not collections.
Okay.
That's an officer.
Wow.
Yeah. So she necessarily wouldn't know that. But that you are assessing people these large bills, and so you wouldn't know that somewhere along the line, hey, yeah, whatever happened to that guy that I assessed that $200,000 to? Never really had the curiosity until 20 years. I mean, she was really near the end of her retirement. When I talked to her, I think she said, she's going to be about 3 more years.
Yeah.
So there it is. So there's an ex-IRS expert. Help me. Like, well, you didn't even know if she didn't meet me that day,
Right.
she wouldn't know to say, oh, hey, here's a solution for you.
So just because it's so convoluted.
Yeah. Yep.
And what I think is interesting as well is what I noticed about this firm when I walked in is you're not Anthony Parental, the expert. You actually have a team of people, each who have their field of knowledge that can work together. There's not one person that's going, I know everything. Everyone is the first ones to say, I'm not sure, but Julie's an expert on that. Let me go check with her.
Yeah. And I tried, I think I tried being the expert for like half a day. And the pressure was just too much. It's like, it's ridiculous. You can't know it all. And, some of the mistakes I've made along the way had nothing to do with my tax knowledge. My biggest mistake was reading a form wrong. Like I knew to read this form and I was looking, and I knew exactly what to look for. And then my eyes played a trick on me. And I'm like, well, Mr. Expert, you just told your client he couldn't be levied. And guess what? He's calling you right now levied. No, that's impossible. No, this is a joke. And I'm like, then I look at the form, like, yeah, it does say you can't be levied. I'm like, how did I, Mr. Expert?
I'm sorry.
Right. And that was just owning up to it to say I screwed up. We got the money back. But then you're like, well, you know what I want is that's when I realized I'm like, I want another set of eyes to check my work. I know I'm a genius, but I might read something that's there, not read something that's there. And so that's where you just need people to back up, just like hospitals. And I remember, I think I was in when I started thinking about this, we started growing, I was in an emergency room, which is just, malpractice heaven. And for attorneys, they're like, oh, those guys are out to kill you. And so that's this whole game. When I'm looking at the processes in an emergency room, what they're doing to avoid malpractice suits. And I said, you know what, that's how I have to treat our clients too. Like attorneys commit malpractice in tax all the time, but clients are never going to know it.
That's true.
You're not going to know what they did unless somebody comes in and tells you, oh yeah, this is what they screwed up here, here, and here. And so I remember one of the first things I saw, I was looking, I'm like, they had color codes that if a patient was in the triage, they went and clicked it. If they were here, they were clicking things with colors. And I said, colors. I said, those are helpful because people know colors. And then it's simple. And so then I said, I think I need to start color coding our file system so that people can pick up a file and know exactly where everything should be, what the status of a case is. And that's one of the things that I did that was genius. Colors, right? Because that's just like basic stuff. Before it's like before you go to expert level, just make sure that you're reading the stuff right and that you're prepared.
And I think it's funny that the IRS asked for feedback about the OVDP program,
right?
And you and your employees, team members, had a 2-hour webinar to point out all the things wrong with just one of the programs.
It was actually 2 programs into one, the Offshore Voluntary Disclosure Program, which is slightly different than the Streamlined Offshore Procedures.
Oh my gosh.
And these were just the actually introductory forms. This was only part. Yeah, this was only part of it. It wasn't even, these were just sort of the first forms that you file with them. And then there was stuff that they needed to have that they didn't have too, we were mentioning. And we weren't talking about the whole procedure. We're just saying your forms are wrong. You're giving us contradictory, your forms are giving contradictory instructions as to what you say online and what the statutes say. So just try to clear, and we're using our attorney brain to say, well, we know what's most important.
Right.
Follow the statute. That's the statute's the law. Your form is not the law. The IRS oftentimes treats forms as a law because, well, somebody made it, right? I mean, somebody.
And even as a layman sitting and watching the webinar, there was so many things that caught my ear that it was sort of jaw dropping. I mean, something as simple as, I thought it was interesting. They were saying on one of the forms, like one out of every IRS form ever, they asked for email. And the IRS has consistently said, listen, we're never going to email you because it could turn into phishing scams. And so the question was, why would you even ask for the email? You're going to make people think that you're going to email them, so then they could potentially fall victim to phishing scams. Or you could send them important information via email, but they're going to assume it's phishing and delete it. Just how dumb. I mean...
how did that get through?
Right.
And the answer is because the IRS is just such a large organization. It doesn't know what it's doing. It can't control its entire self. There's no way it can control its entire self. I can tell you the commissioner of Internal Revenue, he probably speaks with 5 different people a day, on any day. He has no idea what's going on.
It's like the Duggar family parents. There's too many kids to watch. One of them's going to get away with something.
Exactly.
Screw
Right.
up something.
And there's just way too much out there for the IRS to actually have any control over. And somebody could pull such a counterintuitive move as such as asking for an email address. Because if you go on the IRS Twitter feeds, the IRS never sends anything. It's still there. It's like, they're asking for it. Well, except when they do. The IRS never calls you except when they do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Something else you mentioned is people are sometimes afraid to hire an attorney because they think it's going to make them look guilty.
Oh my God, yeah. I'm like, well, yeah, that's just like, and it's the same reason that people who are accused of a crime, the cops know that they can get, the cops are experts at getting the confession they want. I did criminal law for a while, and any cop worth his salt can get his confession. What do you want me to get this confession for from what do you want? And they'll get it. And it's a point of pride. And they have a lack of respect for a cop that can't get a confession from someone regardless of their crime, and err all the time, and it's unfortunately it's only the cases where DNA evidence proves the confession was complete nonsense.
Yep.
And the cops are getting, hey cop, you just got a complete bullshit, you just put someone behind bars for something that didn't happen. What happens to that cop? Nothing. You want to do the sentence now? Because you made that up. Well, he confessed to it. You had all your tricks. And it's the same thing. People like, why didn't you call a cop? Well, I didn't want to look guilty. You know what? The thing that made you look guilty? Being there. Being there.
In the first place.
Right? You want to know the thing that makes you look guilty in the IRS? Being audited. That's the thing that makes you look guilty. So you're already look guilty. You might as well lawyer up. It's your right.
And on the flip side of that, I asked you, are people treated differently by the IRS if they have a tax attorney? And you said yes, but in a positive way.
Oh, yeah.
They're less likely to screw with the
pretty much. I mean, and based on I'm not a CPA, so I can't comment for sure on my interactions, but just based on what CPAs and enrolled agents say and sort of their reactions to some of the same personalities that I deal with, and then from what taxpayers tell me, like my favorite revenue officers, everyone seems to hate. Like, really? He's a nice guy. Oh, we have a great time. We sit around, drink coffee, and we go over, like, it's pretty easy, pretty, business-like. We don't seem to have a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Really? That woman's a horrible person?
Huh.
Really? She did that? That doesn't sound like her, but okay. So we call and we get a lot more respect, and because we know, and especially, I would say maybe a CPA that's built a name for himself, but usually, we're lawyers. We're trained for litigation. We will appeal. We will go to tax court, and you will not kick us out on a technicality. If you're a taxpayer, you're going to be kicked out on technicality because you don't know the rules to follow. You didn't dot this I. Guess what? Bye-bye. We're not worried about you. We don't take you seriously. You don't take your case serious enough to lawyer up. We know we can roll right over you, and we will. And now, once the bill comes, once whatever bad result comes, now people come to say, hey, I messed up this case really bad because I represented myself or I had some nonsense firm help me out. Can you help me? Sure, we can help you, but it would have been a lot easier if you just came to us to begin with instead of making this disaster. And this is, in collections, this happens. People, This is one story that is just absolutely driving me nuts right now. It's ongoing, unfortunately, and it was a client who he owed about $80,000 to the IRS. Oof. And he's like, and he knew about me, and he knew me. Did he call me? Hey, Anthony, I got a problem. Owe 80 grand to the IRS. Can you help me kind of negotiate it? Did he call me? No. He dealt with he's a great negotiator.
Oh,
he's a great negotiator.
But as we've said before, never negotiate for yourself.
Right. He's a great negotiator, and so he can negotiate with a revenue officer who I like. Okay? Mm-hmm. So here it is. You have a taxpayer who's a really good negotiator, and you have a revenue officer who I like, and I've heard his reputation's pretty decent, too. Mm-hmm. And they combined for a complete disaster.
Oh, I can't wait to hear about that. We'll find out what happened next right here on Parental Advisory. Coming up Friday on Parental Advisory, we'll be joined by attorney Robert Hansen to talk about how tax professors inadvertently brainwash lawyers into thinking the tax code is a good thing. Tune in to listen live this Friday at 11 a.m. Be sure to visit our Facebook page to follow us and submit story ideas. And thanks to our sponsor, IRSMedic, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems. Visit IRSMedic.com for the latest news on the disaster that is the U.S. tax code. All right, so welcome back to Parental Advisory.
Too bad.
Hi.
Hi.
We're back.
Well, we're back.
We're back. Why do tax attorneys exist? And you said you had a story about someone who was trying to deal with a reasonable revenue officer.
Mm-hmm. And so this is what happened. He is somebody who's in the financial industry, and he owed this money to the IRS, and the IRS will file a tax lien normally in situations where you owe this amount that you don't have secured. They'll file a tax lien. There is an exception. FINRA, the financial something, if you're a securities license, they won't file it under certain circumstances. And so he told the revenue officer, hey, look, I'm a securities dealer. Don't file a tax lien. And the revenue officer says, oh, okay, I understand. Yep. So here's the deal. This is what I want you to do. I want you to pay this and then pay this amount a month. And then, no lien will be filed unless you default the agreement. Then a lien will be filed. Well, I looked at, now you probably guess what happened. The deal defaulted because a new liability was incurred. When he came in, the IRS filed a lien. They were totally wrong doing it. No, the IRS was right doing it because the deal to begin with was going to default. Mm-hmm. It was designed to fail. I could have told you a million miles away, no, stop what you're doing. This is no good at all. The lien is going to happen as a matter of course. Mm-hmm. The person setting up, this revenue officer, didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know, wait a second, he didn't see the picture together. Mm-hmm. He didn't see what the taxpayer was doing wrong. And so he's like, oh, they've just sort of put a Band-Aid together. Oh, great. Hey, great doing business with you.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on something that needs 8 stitches.
8 stitches or, much more. Or you need serious surgery. Mm-hmm. And they're all buddy-buddy. Hey, he was a really good guy to deal with. So that when the case, they reach their deal, and he starts paying, and then it goes to a completely different place that says, hey, wait, you defaulted the agreement. He tries calling the revenue officer. And the revenue officer doesn't have the case anymore. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have it. You got to call the person who's saying you're defaulting it and then do whatever it is. Well, he doesn't know that. He doesn't know to say, oh, I should call the person, this notice, not the person I was dealing with. Because who would know that? Mm-hmm. And if you did call them, you might have a 2-hour-long wait. So you're like, well, I'll just call my buddy. He'll fix it. And so he left messages but never heard anything. And then the lien's filed. I'm trying to get it off. They're like, no, he defaulted it. So now this has been going on for 2 years trying to get this lien off. That should have never been put on in the first place if the deal was done properly. Now, how much is this costing him as this is going on? Mm-hmm. In lost business. And he knew me. Gosh. He knew what I did. And if you just came to me in the beginning, all of this could have been avoided.
And what you said to me yesterday really stuck with me. Stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
Don't worry about looking guilty. Don't worry about any of that bull. just stand up for yourself and try to take the right steps to fix it.
For most people, their threat of horrible things happening to them, I would say it goes like this, bad things happening to regular people who work. Look, you're not going to be suspected of murder. That's not what's going to happen.
Yes.
You're not going to be hauled into a police station and be fingerprinted. When I did criminal work, the rare thing was somebody without a record. Mm. Okay? If you represented a client who didn't have a record, who's never been in the system, everyone's like, whoa.
Innocent.
Okay, yeah. Hey, sorry. And then you'd be treated totally different. They're like, hey, we're not sure how you got here, but thanks for stopping by. And we'll see that, wow. That's like,
do you need any water? Coffee?
Right,
Can we get you anything?
It's completely different, okay? Because who you're representing in criminal court, look, man, they got a record. They've been through the system. They're on, they're on probation and they broke their probation. You're trying to get them their probation reinstalled. Otherwise, they're going to go back to jail, which might be a better thing because that way they can't break their probation, which they've done 3 times.
But that's not the average Joe.
Right, that's not right. So you as the taxpayer, that's the criminal world. Mm-hmm. The criminal world is you have a record, okay? Mm-hmm. If you don't have a record, the chances of you dealing with something legally that can devastate you, okay, now there's things, okay, so what could? Well, if you're married, the divorce, certainly out there as a risk, but, most people right now, divorce attorneys are actually struggling. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah. Because the money to fight over isn't around. And most people are like, well, we know enough divorce nightmares, so what do you want to deal with? All right, fine. You want a little extra? Okay, if I'm getting a little, all right, whatever. Yeah. I mean, that's the way most divorces go. So it's not even the
now
horrible.
Thinking about some people I know that recently, they just did everything on their own. And it was like, you get the house, I'll get the, we'll split the kid.
Really, right, like, okay, we know what's kind of going to happen.
Yeah.
Right, so it's somewhat of a good thing. So even it's like, okay, that's a bad thing, but it's not that disaster that was typically looming over you. So it's like, okay, well, what are the risks? And what are the other risks? Well, disability, okay. And that's a risk. But the biggest risk still out there that people don't take serious enough is the IRS. That is the one. If you make any sort of decent amount of income, the thing that can blow up in your face, it's like losing your house isn't as bad as getting an IRS problem. Lose your house, you'll get another house. Mm-hmm. But if you get hit with a $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 of a tax debt that's unsecured, because what you're getting for that, what did you get for that tax debt? Good feelings that you paid your fair share? No, you got nothing for that. But you're paying that. So you're paying something you can't afford to pay. That should go to something else. That's going to set you back. And of course, this always happens during your prime earning years. Mm. It doesn't happen when you're 20. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen when you're 25. It's going to happen between your 35. Even now, it's not really. It's more like between your 40, 55, 58, 60. That's most of our clients. That's where most of our clients tend to be.
And that's when you're hopefully are the most responsible. You're finally thinking about, retirement, because in your 20s, you're not going to get old.
No.
You're
really going to win the lottery, too.
Yes.
I mean, all those years, come on. One of those years, you're going to win the lottery.
You got to.
Yeah.
If I play $1 every week, one of these weeks. So, you're thinking, you're probably paying for college, you're thinking about weddings, you're thinking about retirement, and all of a sudden, boom, you're friggin' screwed.
Right. The IRS comes around and you're thinking, well, it can't be that bad.
It can be.
It can be so bad. It can be a 10-year hole. Mm-hmm. And it's just not the financial cost, but this emotional hole that pulls everyone into it.
I think we could do a whole podcast about the emotional aspect of...
Absolutely. Oh, more than... Well, people could do a whole year. And it's usually, unfortunately, it's people... have to learn through experience, and I'll tell you, it's like the person who gets it, and it's, who the person who usually calls us ahead of time before it gets worse is someone who's been through something legal before.
Oh.
The nightmare divorce. If somebody comes to us to say, okay, so what's, tell me a story. Well, I've been through a divorce, really bad divorce 10 years ago. I say, okay, first of all, Eric, you're going to be our client and you're going to be a good client.
Yep.
I already know it, and we'll be able to do a lot of work for you.
You want jaded clients.
Right.
Yes.
You want them. You want someone who's been through it. It's like, well, I've been through a lot of business litigation where someone was trying to dirtbag me, and it cost me a lot of money, and I learned a few things along the way. Those are going to be your best clients. The ones that won't hire you are the ones who believe there's fairness. The ones who haven't been through that horrible thing. They're the ones who are like, okay. But the IRS agent said, well, you just might as well give the money to me because you're just going to pay it to some attorney. It's just money you're going to pay to us. And I mean, that IRS agent wouldn't lie.
No.
This tax attorney, I mean, look at him.
Attorneys.
Attorneys, he's clearly,
There's a lot more jokes about attorneys than IRS agents.
I have monogram shirts.
Yes.
I mean, paid for with clients' blood, right? I mean, that's the kind of wheeler, the dealer I am, right? So that's really the people who get themselves into trouble, is if you haven't been into that horrible trouble. That's usually when, you'll meet with somebody. Okay, I listened to them, but okay, they gave me enough information about what's going on. I think I can handle it myself, or I'll have a CPA friend. I don't need to pay all that money there. I could do it on the cheap. And then it blows up.
And then what I think is funny is how long it takes you as professionals to fix someone's problem, knowing exactly who to call most of the time, what steps have to be taken, what forms have to be filled out. And it takes you an extensive amount of time. So imagine if I tried to do it. So I'm going to call the IRS and be on hold seriously for 2 hours. Seriously.
Right.
And then
I
find
they have
out
the courtesy disconnect. After 2 hours, they hang up on you.
Oh, shut up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But then sometimes if it's really busy, you'll get the call to say, call back later. You're not going to get through today. What you don't want is it to be slightly busy and then getting busier, because they'll let you be on hold and then, it got too busy, 2 hour boom, courtesy disconnect.
What a dick move.
It is so bad. So when you're calling the IRS, you need to know what time to call, what actual number to call, who to talk to, what you're asking for, what line of BS are they going to give you, how to get around that line of BS, okay? And that's just for one part of a case, right? That's not just to solve the case. That's for one part of it, to move it down the step. Okay, now you're waiting to hear back from a manager. Now you're waiting to hear back from a supervisor. Okay, now you're going to appeal it. So now that's just get one step. We're busy all the time doing stuff. Because the IRS, because again, example is, the IRS says they'll never ask for your email, but there they go, asking for your email.
Yep.
So should you give them their email address?
It's like they can't get out of their own way.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you're left with it. There's no way the average, even above average taxpayer could understand this. It's not even a system for the tax professional.
Yep.
Tax professionals have a horrible time trying to deal with the IRS because you're trying to do it on their own. And you really need a team out there of collaboration to say, hey, by the way, this is what they're saying over here. Really? They shouldn't be saying that. Well, guess what?
So don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Don't be afraid of looking guilty. Don't be afraid to call and even just get information. I love that you sometimes are like, no, we can't help you, but here, let me point you in the right direction.
That. Not every case requires a tax attorney,
Yep.
Otherwise there's not enough attorneys. If every case required a tax attorney, every attorney would have to be a tax attorney.
Right. And it sounds like the IRS is so screwed up. It's not like you're going to put yourself out of business.
No.
There's going to be plenty more cases coming.
The problem is that people don't take it seriously. They don't see it for the risk it really is. There is no one is more powerful than the IRS, and there's no one less accountable. And you are going to put yourself between that power and lack of accountability. There's you in the middle.
Oof.
Undefended, and you think you know what you do, because sometimes you're going to follow their instructions. Like, well, no.
It's like you're standing in the past in Sparta.
Right. And then there's an instruction from the IRS, do this and you'll be okay. Oh, those were the old instructions.
That was, Sam was supposed to post that. He was on a drunken binge night before, posted the wrong one.
That was the wrong one.
Sorry.
Right. So anyway.
Are you bleeding badly? Are you...
Looks like you need some hydration. Anyway, I'll see you later. okay, please fill out our survey. They'll send the survey to
If
see
you
how.
could give us 5 stars.
Well, also their hold music, it says, please hold while we're waiting for other customers. So they can't even get that right. They can't even get hold music to say, because we're not customers.
No.
We're captives, right?
Casualties.
Right. So it's like their hold music isn't even correct. And yet you're going to trust these people.
God loves the IRS. All right. Well, thank you for all the information. Friday, I'm
Yes.
excited. We've got a guest.
Yes. Oh, he's one of my, he is, unfortunately, Robert Hansen is one of the attorneys here. Unfortunately, he's so busy all the time. We only got him last Friday. We got a little taste of him. He is quite a talent. He is someday he will probably be taking over this podcast for me. He doesn't know that. Maybe he does. I think he's been eyeing this chair. He's got a lot of years and a lot of work to do before he gets to that, but he's agreed to talk to us on Friday about a great topic. I mean, this is something that, he's one of these guys who really, really, just to bounce ideas off of. And I came up with a very angry blog, very pointed, and he showed me why I was wrong. While I was really off base, he goes, "No, that's not why."
Where's the blog? What's
It's
the
not
title?
posted.
Oh, I was going to review it.
I didn't do it. I was like, "No, I will put this in draft."
Oh, that's
He's like, "Yeah, you're
fantastic.
pretty much wrong. You're picking a fight over the wrong thing, dummy." Yeah, you're right.
Wow. Okay. So you just blew my mind. Somebody that proved Anthony Parent wrong.
Right,
Our
and
next guest on Parental Advisory. Tune in Friday. Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining Parental Advisory, hosted by Anthony Parent, produced by Claudine Gindel, that's me, engineered by Chris Chen. For more podcasts, visit our website at parentaladvisoryshow.com and like us on Facebook to submit story ideas. We'd like to thank our sponsors, IRSMedic.com, the law offices of Parent, and Wynn, LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.